So one of the things I want to do is kind of highlight sort of the perspective on the German system from America. Some of the things that Jürgen talks about for him are like, that's what he grew up with, that's what he was used to. When an American looks at what's going on in Germany, it's kind of like, wow, how can that possibly be happening in a number of different ways? Yeah. Okay. So, can everybody hear me? Okay, I don't think I need a microphone. Okay, so basically what I wanted to do was talk about 4 different types of institutions that really make Germany quite different from the United States. And the first 2 are basically going to be similar to what Jürgen just talked about. Co-determination, and let me just make a special kind of note here. I think co-determination is a little bit tricky as a word and might be a little confusing for Americans. So consequently, when I teach some of my classes that use co-determination, I kind of refer to co-determination in one sense on the corporate boards. And then, as you can see on the back of the handout about works councils, oftentimes Germans use the word co-determination on that also. I change that to co-decision making, so I can be clear about what co-determination is. And then when you get on a works council where you really have the power to say something, it's like co-decision making rather than co-determination. Okay, so we have co-determination, works councils, an apprenticeship system that's 4 to 5 times larger than the American system of apprenticeships. And consequently, when people graduate from what would be from high school in the United States, and they've gone through this apprenticeship program, they are certified as skilled technicians like plumbers, apprentices, and so on. But it covers much more of the labor force than it does in the United States. And then, 4th, a highly organized trade union system with employer federations and trade union federations that aren't just lobbying groups, but actually are involved in various aspects of the economy. So the co-determination, which is corporate boards. Jürgen just talked about supervisory boards. In the American sense, we'd refer to this as the corporate boards, worker representation on corporate boards. This came out of these 3 different acts, 1951, 1952, and 1976. On the handout where I have the little people on the corporate board, which is called supervisory board in Germany, you can see that there's different proportions of worker representatives on each one of them. But I would just like to stress here, how many workers do we have in corporate boards in the United States? Right, Doug Fraser and Chrysler back in, what was it, the 1980s, 70s? I mean, that's really the only example you can come up with.
General Motors.
General, who's?
Yes.
One person. Okay, so one person, very, important person in the labor movement was on the corporate board, but we're talking about just about equal representation of shareholders and owners to workers. That is relatively astounding from an American perspective. Okay, here's an example of Daimler's corporate boards, and should have made this a little bit brighter, but these people here are basically the worker representatives, and Michael Brecht is the vice chair of the Daimler corporate board. Works councils, as Jürgen mentioned, there are 2 different acts, one that didn't work very well in the 20s, and one in 1952 that have established works councils. What do works councils do? Well, look at the text part of the handout that I gave you, and it basically gives you a list of all the different things works councils do. And pay attention to the words co-decision. That's where you really have power, where you can basically veto, some kind of decision, like implementing new technology. When I was doing my research in Germany on labor market policy, a friend of mine was at a private research institute, and he was complaining to me, we don't have computers in our office. We can't do our research. Our secretaries and administrative assistants won't work with computers because the Works Council says we have to review this. And he said, this is crazy. But think about it. There they are, all these employees of this research institute, and they have a basic question here. Are we going to be able to keep our jobs? Are you going to bring in this new technology and, start cutting people? And so consequently, they, worked on it and basically came up with what's referred to oftentimes as a social plan that will implement this new technology, and we won't be letting people go from the workforce. Again, no wage bargaining. Works councils never engage in wage bargaining. The apprenticeship system. Germany's school system's totally different from the United States. The United States is what's referred to as a horizontal system. Everybody goes through the same schools. That's not the case in Germany. I won't go further into that, but what Germany does have is a system where people, while they would be, say, sophomores in our high school, they would go to a company and they would work as an apprentice, and they would go to a part-time school called the Berufsschule, and they would learn a trade in a very specific way. So consequently, when they graduate, the equivalent of a high school graduate, they can basically say they are a skilled worker that can do a job. In the American high school, when you graduate from high school and you don't go to college, what kind of job can you do? You have no particular claim for any specific kind of job. There's a little exception on vocational programs, but for the most part, the vocational programs are clearly not as skilled as they are in Germany. Right now, part of what most German companies do when they come to the United States is they want to replicate this in some way. They can't replicate it exactly like Germany because Germany, has this system, evolved for a long time and is very expert. But basically what most German plants want to do is to locate close to a community college and establish some kind of relationship with that community college. But for the VW plant, they formally want to establish apprenticeship programs. And currently the German embassy is going around the country promoting apprenticeships. And Obama's pretty strongly impressed with apprenticeship systems also. The fourth point I want to make is that in Germany, trade unions are much more centralized than they are in the United States. And when you say IG Metall, which is the emblem on the right up here in the red, this is the metal workers union, and it consists of everybody that does metal. So it's like the steel workers, it's like the automobile workers, aluminum, most manufacturing that involves metal is an IG Metall, and consequently they are one of the strongest, they are the strongest union in Germany. So there's really only like 11 or 12 of these centralized unions that cover most of the labor market in Germany. And they bargain not at an individual company level, they bargain at a what we would call a state, they call a land. It's basically regional bargaining over all of the industry. So this bargaining is massive. And if they go out on strike, it's not like, Ford goes out on strike and then Chrysler or GM sales go up. They go out on strike, they shut down the whole industry, the whole auto industry, the steel industry, large segments of the economy. Along with this, Germany also has a social democratic party that is much closer to a labor party than the American Democratic Party. Okay, so just in conclusion, German boards of directors have workers on them. In the United States, this is an extremely rare phenomenon. German large firms have works councils. Works councils are illegal in the United States unless the company is unionized. The German apprenticeship system trains 30 to 40% of its workforce to do highly technical jobs by the time they graduate from high school. But in the United States, most people not going on to college don't really get that training. Maybe they can get that training later on in their 20s or 30s if they can get into a program like that. But this is systematic in Germany. And four, the German labor relations consists of centralized trade union federations and centralized employer federations that cooperate together in large aspects of the economy. That kind of cooperation is just really difficult to get in the United States, especially like in the training system. So consequently, I just wanted to make these 4 points. Germany is quite different from the United States. It's quite remarkable in a lot of different ways, and it's to their credit that they could go into a number of different countries and try and implement this system that has emerged from their own indigenous institutions. So I'll just stop there.
Thank you. Again, I think it's a very useful introductory presentation for our panel discussion. I'm going to ask the panelists to come forward. Fortunately, I've already introduced several of them. Lydia and Tom and Jurgen and Marty. And